The glint of sun on discarded metal was a familiar sight in Eli's world, a landscape of forgotten things and peeling paint. He moved through it with a quiet grace, his eyes seeing not decay, but potential. In his small hands, a rusted bicycle chain, a bent fork, a frame that had long given up its ghost, began to find new purpose. It was a humble act of creation, a small defiance against the entropy of his crumbling neighborhood. Before we dive into this story, let us know where you're watching from in the comments below. And if you believe quiet genius always finds a way, hit that like button and subscribe for more. Eli had little, no gleaming workshop, no expensive tools, just the contents of a sparse toolbox his grandfather had left him and the boundless expanse of his own imagination. His home was a small, weathered house where the scent of his grandmother's cooking usually battled the city's pervasive dust. He was a boy of few words, his strength hidden in the deliberate movements of his hands and the intense focus in his dark eyes. His genius was a quiet current running beneath a surface of gentle deference, often overlooked. His grandmother, Mama Rose, was his anchor, her wisdom a quiet hum in their small home, her belief in him a silent, unwavering force. She never pushed, only provided the space for his spirit to roam. But what happened next would change everything. Eli's childhood had been shaped by scarcity and the early loss of his parents, experiences that had sculpted him into a keen observer and a natural problem solver. He didn't learn from books or instructors. He learned from watching, from touching, from taking things apart and painstakingly putting them back together, often in improved configurations. His world was one of tactile understanding. The neighborhood, with its symphony of creaking porches, distant sirens, and the laughter of children making games from nothing, was his classroom. He'd sit on their small porch, watching the world, his mind cataloging the mechanics of a passing truck, the flight of a bird, the way a loose shutter swung in the wind. Mama Rose understood his quiet intensity. She was a woman whose own life had been a testament to resilience, her hands as capable of tending a struggling tomato plant in their tiny yard as they were of soothing a scraped knee or a troubled heart. Their bond was woven from shared silences, understanding glances, and the comforting rhythm of their days. That boy, she'd sometimes murmur to a neighbor, a soft pride in her voice, he sees the world different. The antagonist, initially, wasn't a person but a pervasive system, one that equated opportunity with postcodes and resources with inherent worth, a system that rarely looked for brilliance in places like Eli's Street. Then, the sleek, silent hum of an expensive electric car disturbed the morning quiet, a stark black anomaly against the faded pastels of the houses. A man in a crisp jacket, a subtle tech logo gleaming on the breast, stepped out. This was Mr. Sterling, his gaze sweeping over the scene with an appraising air that felt alien to the neighborhood's lived-in comfort. He wasn't looking at the resilience, the community, he was looking for a commodity, a curiosity sparked by a grainy video. The neighbors, who had initially watched Eli's project with fond amusement, now peered from behind curtains, a mixture of awe and apprehension in their eyes. The contrast was stark, the gleaming vehicle and its polished occupant against Eli's creation, birthed from rust and ingenuity, standing as a testament to a different kind of value. The catalyst had been a short, shaky video, filmed by a teenager down the street, captivated by the sight of Eli gliding silently past on his resurrected bicycle. The video, uploaded with a casual caption, "Kid from my block made this out of trash," had unexpectedly caught the algorithm's fickle attention. By morning, it had thousands of views, then tens of thousands, comments ranging from disbelief to admiration. It was this digital ripple that had summoned Mr. Sterling, a senior talent scout from Innovate Futures, a titan in the tech world, always hungry for the next marketable prodigy. The invitation to meet the boy who made a machine from nothing was less an acknowledgement of raw genius and more an exploration of a potential PR coup. Eli, confronted by Sterling's polished presence on his own porch, felt a wave of shyness, his natural inclination to retreat warring with a nascent curiosity. Mama Rose stood beside him, her presence a silent shield, her eyes wise and assessing. Sterling's initial questions were smooth, almost too practiced, probing Eli's methods, his understanding of the principles he'd so intuitively applied. "How did you figure out the gearing, son? Did you have schematics?" Eli, unused to such direct scrutiny, simply explained his process in a soft, steady voice. He spoke of feeling the balance, of listening to the metal, of trial and error, his hands subtly gesturing as if recounting a conversation with the machine itself. Sterling listened, a slight, almost imperceptible frown creasing his brow. This wasn't the language of engineering he knew. It was something more elemental, harder to quantify, and therefore, harder to control. He saw the boy, the bike, the poverty, and filed it under raw, unrefined talent, potential for a good story. Mr. Sterling, after a cursory inspection of the bicycle and a few more questions, offered Eli an opportunity, a place in Innovate Future's prestigious Young Innovators program. It was framed as a remarkable chance, a lifeline, though Eli sensed an undercurrent of patronage. Mama Rose listened intently, her gaze never leaving Sterling's face. "He's a good boy," she said, her voice quiet but firm. "He needs a place that sees him, not just what he can do for them." Sterling assured her of their commitment to nurturing talent. The next Monday, Eli found himself in the gleaming, sterile heart of Innovate Futures. The building was a monument to modernism, all glass and steel, a stark contrast to the organic disarray of his neighborhood. He felt like a transplanted seedling, his roots still clinging to familiar soil. He was assigned a small workstation in a brightly lit open-plan office, surrounded by other interns, mostly college students, whose conversation buzzed with jargon and casual confidence that made Eli feel even more out of place. His initial tasks were menial, almost insulting, sorting components, running diagnostics on outdated prototypes. He did them diligently, his quiet focus unwavering, his hands moving with their usual precision. But his mind was always working, observing, analyzing. He noticed things others missed, a subtle inefficiency in a power distribution system, a recurring glitch in a software interface. One afternoon, tasked with testing a new drone prototype, Eli noticed a faint, almost imperceptible vibration in one of the rotor arms, a tiny imbalance that would eventually lead to catastrophic failure under stress. He mentioned it to a senior intern, a young man named Marcus, who glanced at Eli's notes with a dismissive air. "The simulations are all green, kid. It's fine. Stick to the checklist." Eli didn't argue, but the observation stayed with him. He knew the language of machines, the subtle whispers of impending breakdown. He began to spend his lunch breaks in the company's discarded tech bay, a cleaner, more organized version of the junkyards he knew. Here, among the rejected circuit boards and decommissioned prototypes, he felt a sense of familiarity. He started to experiment, using his innate understanding of mechanics and his newfound access to slightly more advanced components, to build a small device, a diagnostic tool of his own design, to precisely measure and illustrate the drone imbalance he detected. It wasn't part of his assigned work. It was simply his nature to solve a problem once he'd seen it. Meanwhile, Mr. Sterling, busy with higher-level concerns, would occasionally pass by, offering a curt nod or a brief, "Keeping busy, Eli?" The Young Innovators program was, for Sterling, more about optics and identifying easily molded talent than about fostering disruptive, unconventional thinkers. Eli's quietness was misinterpreted as lack of ambition, his different approach as a lack of sophistication. The stakes for Eli were immense. This internship was more than just a line on a resume. It was a potential pathway to a different life for him and Mama Rose, a chance to translate his hidden gift into tangible security. Yet, the sterile environment, the dismissal of his insights, began to weigh on him. He saw so much waste, so many over-engineered solutions to simple problems, a stark contrast to the resourcefulness his life had demanded. One evening, he shared his frustrations with Mama Rose. "They don't listen," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "It's like they can't see what's right in front of them." Mama Rose simply took his hand. "Then you find another way to show them, child. Your truth has its own voice. Let it speak." Her words reignited his resolve. He decided to approach Sterling directly. He carefully prepared his findings on the drone, along with his small, self-made diagnostic tool. He managed to get a brief appointment, finding Sterling in his expansive office, a panoramic view of the city behind him. Eli explained his concerns about the drone, his voice low but clear, demonstrating his device. Sterling watched with a detached politeness, his eyes betraying a hint of impatience. "Eli," he said, his voice smooth, "this is interesting. But we have teams of experienced engineers, multi-million-dollar simulation software. I appreciate your initiative, but perhaps you should focus on the tasks you've been assigned. Learn the ropes. There's a process here." The dismissal, though polite, was absolute. Sterling saw a boy playing with scraps, not an innovator offering a genuine insight. Eli left the office, a cold knot of disappointment in his chest. He realized Sterling wasn't just an individual. He represented the system, the polished facade that often masked a reluctance to embrace true, ground-up change. The drone was a small thing, but Eli had also started to notice subtle, worrying anomalies in the data streams related to Innovate Future's flagship project, a new, supposedly revolutionary battery technology. The patterns were faint, easily overlooked if you were only looking at spreadsheets and projections, but to Eli, who understood systems from the inside out, they hinted at a fundamental instability, a potential for failure far more significant than a wobbly drone. He knew he couldn't just let it go. The anomalies in the battery project data nodded Eli. They reminded him of the way a bicycle frame would groan almost imperceptibly before a weld failed, a subtle warning that only a keen ear could detect. He began to spend his evenings after work and his weekends poring over publicly available research papers on similar battery chemistries, cross-referencing them with the fragmented data points he discreetly managed to observe at Innovate Futures. He wasn't stealing information. He was connecting dots that were already there, dots that the company, in its rush for a breakthrough, seemed to be ignoring. In the small, cluttered space he'd cleared in Mama Rose's shed, surrounded by his familiar tools and the comforting scent of old wood and oil, he started to build a model. Not a perfect replica, but a conceptual demonstration, using salvaged components and his own ingenuity to illustrate the potential failure point he suspected in Innovate Future's design. It was a race against time. The company was planning a major press conference and investor showcase in 2 weeks to unveil the Prometheus battery, touted as the next leap in energy storage. If his suspicions were correct, the launch could be, at best, a massive embarrassment, and at worst, dangerous. Mama Rose watched him, her worry a silent presence, but her faith in his integrity absolute. She brought him food, kept his workspace tidy, and offered quiet words of encouragement. "You do what you know is right, child," she told him one late night, her hand resting on his shoulder. Truth has a way of finding the light. He knew presenting his findings through official channels was futile after his experience with Sterling and the drone. He needed to create something undeniable, something that couldn't be easily dismissed or buried. His model wasn't just about proving a flaw. It was about demonstrating a better understanding, a more elegant and stable approach. He refined his small prototype, working with a focused intensity that shut out the rest of the world. The deadline loomed, each passing day ratcheting up the pressure. He felt the weight of it, the potential fallout, the risk to his own fragile future. But a deeper conviction drove him, the pursuit of truth, the responsibility that came with seeing what others couldn't or wouldn't. The day of the Prometheus battery launch arrived, a spectacle of corporate ambition. The Innovate Futures auditorium buzzed with anticipation. Investors in tailored suits, journalists with cameras poised, and tech enthusiasts filled the tiered seating. On stage, a sleek, futuristic set glowed under meticulously designed lighting. Mr. Sterling, the embodiment of confident success, was about to take the podium. Eli, dressed in the neatest clothes he owned, slipped into the auditorium, his small, self-built demonstration unit concealed in a plain canvas bag. He found a seat in the back, his heart pounding against his ribs. He wasn't sure how he would do it, but he knew he had to. Sterling began his presentation, his voice resonant, painting a picture of a revolutionary future powered by the Prometheus battery. Graphs and projections filled the massive screen behind him, showcasing impressive, yet Eli knew, potentially misleading performance metrics. As Sterling moved towards the grand reveal of the battery itself, a critical moment in the demonstration sequence, Eli saw his chance. There was a brief interactive Q&A planned with a live data feed from a working prototype. With a surge of adrenaline, Eli moved swiftly, yet calmly, towards a side access panel he'd noticed earlier, one that connected to the stage's audio-visual system. He'd come prepared with a simple interface he'd built, designed to overlay his model's live diagnostic data onto the main feed if he could find a port. It was a long shot. Just as Sterling gestured for the live feed to begin, Eli managed to connect his device. For a split second, nothing happened. Then, alongside Innovate Future's glowing projections, a smaller, starker set of data points appeared on the screen, Eli's data, showing the stress indicators and the critical instability threshold of his own model, which mirrored the Prometheus's underlying, hidden flaw. A confused murmur rippled through the audience. Sterling faltered, his polished smile freezing. Technicians scrambled, but Eli's feed was clear, simple, and damningly illustrative. He stepped forward from the shadows, his small demonstration unit now visible. Security guards started to move towards him, but a prominent investor in the front row, a woman known for her sharp technical acumen, raised a hand. "Let the boy speak." All eyes turned to Eli. His voice, initially hesitant, gained strength as he began to explain, not with accusations, but with the calm clarity of someone who understood the core principles. He spoke of thermal runaway, of dendrite formation, of the subtle cascading failures his model predicted and demonstrated. He didn't just point out a flaw. He articulated the science behind it, with a depth that belied his youth and lack of formal credentials. Sterling's face was a mask of controlled fury, his carefully orchestrated event unraveling. The questions from the audience, initially directed at Sterling, now shifted to Eli, genuine curiosity and dawning respect in their voices. The truth, presented with such quiet, undeniable evidence, had cut through the corporate spin. Eli stood there, not as a disruptor, but as a voice of reason, his small, handmade device a symbol of true innovation against a backdrop of expensive, flawed ambition. The climax wasn't an explosion, but a shift in understanding, a quiet triumph of substance over style. A profound silence settled in the auditorium for a moment after Eli finished speaking, the kind of silence that follows an undeniable truth. Then, the quiet was broken by a smattering of applause, which quickly grew. Mr. Sterling stood frozen, his composure shattered, the slick veneer of his presentation stripped away. The investor who had called for Eli to speak, a Ms. Eris Thorne, known for backing truly disruptive technologies, approached the stage, her expression thoughtful. She looked from Eli to Sterling, then back to Eli, a flicker of deep interest in her eyes. Mama Rose, who had managed to get a staff pass through a sympathetic kitchen worker she knew from her church, appeared at Eli's side, her hand finding his. Her eyes shone with a fierce, quiet pride. There were no words, just the pressure of her fingers, a lifetime of belief conveyed in that simple touch. Eli took a deep, steadying breath, the adrenaline slowly ebbing, leaving behind a sense of profound relief. In the days that followed, news of the Prometheus incident spread through the tech world. Innovate Futures issued a terse statement about undergoing a thorough review of our next-generation battery project. Mr. Sterling was conspicuously absent from subsequent company communications. Ms. Thorne, however, reached out to Eli directly. She didn't offer him a token internship. She offered him a place in her own independent research incubator, a place known for valuing raw talent and unconventional thinking, with full scholarship and resources. We need people who see the bones of things, Eli, she had said, her handshake firm. Not just the paint. Eli thought of his neighborhood, of the things left to rust, and the things that could be reborn. He accepted, knowing this was a real beginning. He was later seen, not in a vast corporate office, but in a well-equipped, though unpretentious, workshop space provided by Thorne's foundation. Better tools, yes, but his hands moved with the same quiet reverence for the materials, the same deep connection to the act of creation. Mama Rose was there, of course, helping him set up a small corner with a comfortable chair and a pot of tea, their quiet rhythm undisturbed by the new surroundings. One afternoon, Eli stood by the window, looking out. He was sketching designs, not for a corporate product, but for a small community workshop back in his old neighborhood, a place where other quiet geniuses might find the tools and encouragement to make their own machines out of nothing. He picked up a piece of polished aluminum, turning it over in his hands, a familiar glint of an idea, of pure potential, already sparking in his eyes. This is where the journey truly begins, a testament to how quiet genius, when allied with courage, can indeed reshape the world. Thanks for watching till the end. If you enjoyed the story, give this video a like if you haven't already, and subscribe for more.